The rain on the day of my sister's funeral wasn't just rain. It was a deluge, a relentless, weeping sky over Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. It hammered a sea of black umbrellas huddled like a flock of miserable birds. I stood apart from them, the cold water soaking through my cheap suit jacket, feeling only the rhythmic thud of dirt on polished mahogany. Each clump was a final, merciless period at the end of the only chapter in my life that had ever mattered. A world without Olivia felt impossible, like a tear in the fabric of my existence. My twin. My other half. Grief sat in my chest like a block of ice, pressing down until every breath felt like breaking glass. I vaguely registered the people around me, Ethan's heartbroken parents, a few of his colleagues from the hospital, some distant cousins of ours who had shown up out of a sense of grim duty. They were islands of their own sorrow. I was adrift in a freezing, black ocean. My mind kept replaying a memory from when we were 7, Olivia, with a gap-toothed grin, showing me a frog she'd caught by the creek, her eyes sparkling with a light that I thought could never be extinguished. Now, that light was gone, and the darkness was absolute. Then, a vibration against my leg. A ghost in the machine buzzed against my leg. I numbly pulled out my phone, its screen a smear of raindrops. A message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the words that materialized through the blur didn't just shock me, they detonated my reality. I'm alive. That isn't me in the coffin. P.S. The Oak's treasure is safe. My heart, which I thought had stopped beating, slammed against my ribs with the force of a battering ram. My hands began to shake, the phone slick and heavy in my grip. The old Oak's treasure. It wasn't a phrase, it was a key we'd forged as kids. A key to a rusty tin box we had buried under the sprawling roots of an ancient oak tree in a forgotten park back in Youngstown, a lifetime ago. A secret that belonged to 2 children who had nothing else. It couldn't be a prank. No one else knew. It had to be her. 1,000 questions screamed through my mind, drowning out the preacher's solemn words. If Olivia was alive, who was in that casket? Who had put her there? And why? I looked up at the mourners, at the gray, indifferent world, and for the first time since the news broke, the ice in my chest began to melt, replaced by a raging, white-hot fire. Without a word I turned my back on the grave and walked into the storm, every step hotter than the last. My sister was alive, and someone was going to pay. A longer reflection on the funeral scene itself, how Jack looks at the mourners, imagines their whispers, notices Ethan's parents devastated, and wrestles with whether he should scream the truth out loud. This gives more suspense before he walks away. My name is Jack Carter. Until that moment, I was just a 35-year-old mechanic from Youngstown, Ohio. A life built on routine and the familiar smell of motor oil. To understand how I found myself walking away from my own sister's funeral on a mission I didn't yet comprehend, you have to understand the crucible that forged us. You have to go back to the beginning. We were born on a frigid December morning in 1990, into a house that was already cold. Youngstown was haunted by the skeletons of steel mills that had once been its heart. Our father was a roofer, a hard man whose moods were as unpredictable as the Ohio weather. Our mother was a waitress at a diner, her youthful optimism worn down to a permanent, weary sigh. They were 2 people trapped in a life they hadn't chosen, and we were the most visible symbols of their cage. Their fights were earthquakes that rattled our thin walls until silence felt more dangerous than shouting. We weren't children to them. We were expenses, burdens, the reason they couldn't escape. If it weren't for the kids, was the constant refrain that echoed through the thin walls. We learned to make ourselves small, to navigate the emotional minefield of our home with the caution of bomb disposal experts. We only had each other. We were a 2-person tribe against the world. I was bigger, quicker to anger, the self-appointed guardian. When a neighborhood bully made Olivia cry, I sent him home with a bloody nose and earned a week of being grounded. It was worth it. Olivia was the quiet observer, the thinker. She saw the patterns in our parents' behavior, knew when to speak and when to disappear. She was the light, and I was the one who kept the shadows at bay. A full memory sequence, describe one or two more adventures Jack and Olivia had as kids, sneaking into the steel mill ruins, camping by the creek, or carving their initials into the oak. More playful sibling moments build emotional weight for her. Death. The treasure box was her idea. We were 10. We pooled the crumpled dollars we earned from mowing lawns and babysitting. In the box went our savings, a few shiny rocks, a comic book, and a photograph of the two of us squinting into the sun. We buried it under the largest oak in Mill Creek Park. It wasn't just trinkets, it was our hope in a box, a down payment on a future somewhere, anywhere else. When we were 14, I taught her to swim at the reservoir. The water was brown and murky, but it was our ocean. One afternoon, a sudden, powerful current pulled her under. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. I dove again and again, my lungs burning, until my hand brushed against her hair. I dragged her to the shore, where she coughed up water, her body trembling. "You saved me," she gasped. The words settled deep inside me, a sacred vow. I would always save her. At 18, she did what we'd always dreamed of, she got out. A full academic scholarship to Northwestern University in Chicago. The day I put her on the bus was the proudest and most painful day of my life. I watched the bus pull away, taking the best part of me with it, leaving me behind in the gray, unchanging landscape of Youngstown. I became a mechanic, finding a simple satisfaction in bringing broken things back to life. My life fell into a rhythm: work, fix cars in my garage, have a beer with a few friends. It was a small life, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Olivia blossomed. Her letters and calls were filled with the energy of a new world: museums, deep dish pizza, sailing on Lake Michigan. She was building the life we had buried in our treasure box. Then she met Ethan. He was a brilliant surgical resident, but more than that, he was a genuinely good man. He came from a world of privilege, with a family estate in Lake Geneva, but he had a quiet humility and a deep kindness. The first time I met him, he spent an hour in my garage talking about engine specs, his sleeves rolled up, unbothered by the grease. He didn't see a small-town mechanic, he saw Olivia's brother, and he treated me with respect and warmth. He loved her completely, and for that, he became my brother too. Their wedding was an ethereal dream on the shore of Lake Geneva. Standing in a stiff tuxedo, I had never felt more out of place, but seeing Olivia's radiant happiness as she said her vows to Ethan was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. For the first time, she was truly safe, truly cherished. Their life together was a beautiful chapter. Expand on their life, describe one trip they took, Paris, or a road trip across the U.S. Show Jack visiting them for a holiday in more detail: fireplace, dinner table, laughter. This makes their bond and the loss of Ethan sharper. Ethan became a renowned surgeon. They traveled. They filled their gorgeous home with laughter and friends. I would visit for holidays, a welcome guest in their world, and for a little while, I could pretend that the darkness of our childhood was 1,000 miles away. The diagnosis came 4 years into their marriage. A rare, aggressive cancer. It was a cruel, senseless blow. I drove to Wisconsin and watched my sister become a warrior, caring for Ethan with a strength that humbled me. I saw the love between them deepen even as his body failed him. He passed away 2 months later, holding her hand. The light in Olivia's world dimmed, but it did not go out. Ethan, in his final act of love, left his entire estate to her. The house, the stocks, the fortune his family had built over generations. Nearly $25 million. It was a testament to his love, but it was also a curse. It was a beacon that lit up the sky, and back in the shadows of Youngstown, the vultures had been watching. Our parents, who hadn't visited once during Ethan's illness, were suddenly overcome with concern. The first call came from our mother a week after the funeral. Her voice was thick with a syrupy sympathy that turned my stomach. The call ended, as they all would, with a casual mention of a bill they couldn't pay. Olivia, her heart softened by grief, sent them money. It was like feeding a stray cat. They kept coming back for more. The calls became a weekly ritual of emotional blackmail. Dad's truck needed a new transmission. Mom's dental work was astronomical. Their complaints were a thinly veiled demand for a handout from their millionaire daughter. They just want to be a part of my life now, Olivia told me, her voice strained. No, Liv, I said, my voice hard. They want a part of Ethan's life. They want his money. The pressure campaign culminated in our mother's grand idea, a family yacht trip on Lake Michigan. To reconnect. She chirped over the phone. A memorial for Ethan. It would do you so much good to get out on the water, honey. Just us. Family. It felt profoundly wrong, a desecration of Ethan's memory. But Olivia was exhausted from fighting, worn down by grief and their relentless guilt-tripping. She agreed. A knot of pure dread tightened in my gut, but I promised her I would be right by her side. The Thursday before the trip, our mother called again, her voice a frantic performance. Jack, honey, your father's thrown his back out. He can barely move. There's no way we can make it. We are just devastated. But you two absolutely have to go. Everything is arranged. Don't let it go to waste because of us. Olivia needs this. The excuse was so laughably transparent I wanted to scream. But Olivia, ever hopeful, wanted to believe it. The next day, we boarded the Serenity. The three-man crew, hired and paid for by our parents, was waiting. The first day was peaceful, a calm before the inevitable storm. But by Saturday, the sky had turned a menacing gray. The storm hit Sunday morning. It wasn't just weather, it was fury itself, tearing at the yacht. Waves the size of small houses crashed over the deck. The radio was dead. The satellite phone had no signal. Then, from the bowels of the yacht, came a deafening, metallic explosion. The whole vessel shuddered violently and began to list. Chaos erupted. I found a life jacket and wrestled it onto a terrified Olivia. Draw out the sequence. Describe the crew panicking, one shouting orders, another swept overboard, Jack and Olivia crawling across a tilted deck, the metallic smell of burning fuel. Then the wave hits. This will make the disaster feel cinematic. Stay with me! I screamed over the shriek of the wind. A wave like a collapsing building hit, flipping us into freezing chaos. The world spun, and we were thrown into the churning, icy abyss. I surfaced, gasping, screaming her name. The yacht was gone. There was only the storm, the wreckage, and a terrifying, all-encompassing silence where my sister's voice should have been. I was in a hospital bed when the Coast Guard officer told me they had called off the search for survivors. For 2 days, I existed in a fog of guilt and despair. Then came the funeral, the fake body, and the text message that brought me back to life. A second message came that night, Truro Beach Cabin, by the old lighthouse. 10 p.m. Come alone. The drive to the coast was a blur of rain-slicked highways. Truro Beach was a desolate strip of sand, battered by waves. She had chosen Truro because it was far from anyone who knew us, and the lighthouse kept the cabin off the radar. I found the cabin, a dark, lonely shape against the night sky. My heart hammered against my ribs as I knocked. The door creaked open. It was her. She was gaunt, her eyes haunted, but she was real. Words failed. We clung to each other in the dark, two halves stitched back together by survival. Include more dialogue, Olivia telling what Gus risked to hide her, Jack asking desperate questions. Why didn't you call me sooner? Did they hurt you? And Olivia explaining she was too terrified to reach out. Build slower tension before revealing the secret, Will. She told me her story. A local fisherman named Gus had found her, nearly dead from hypothermia, clinging to a life raft hours after the wreck. He'd taken her in, and she'd been hiding in his remote cabin ever since, terrified to show her face. I knew they wouldn't stop Jack. She sobbed. If they found out I was alive, they'd just try again. That's when she told me about Ethan's updated will, a revision he had quietly filed a month before he died, leaving everything to her outright and cutting out any potential claims from her family. My mind reeled as the pieces of their monstrous plot clicked into place. They had arranged the boat, hired the crew, and engineered a last-minute excuse to stay behind. They had tried to murder their own daughter for a fortune they were never entitled to. The fire that had been smoldering inside me erupted into a full-blown inferno. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. Our plan was simple and dangerous. Olivia would remain hidden. I would become the hunter. I started at the marina. I found the young dockhand who'd been on duty. After I slipped him 100, his memory improved. He remembered a man in a dark hoodie acting suspiciously around the Serenity's engine compartment the night before it sailed. He'd thought it was odd but had assumed he was part of the crew. I drove back to Youngstown and began to watch my parents. They had already started spending. A new truck sat in the driveway. Mom had new clothes. They were celebrating. On the third night, they drove to a seedy bar on the industrial outskirts of town. I watched from my car as they met with a man in a dark hoodie. My heart pounded. It was him. I followed him to an abandoned warehouse district. I cornered him under the sickly orange glow of a single streetlight. He was bigger than me, but I had a lifetime of rage on my side. "We need to talk about the Serenity," I said, my voice low and hard. Panic flashed in his eyes. He tried to shove me aside, but I was ready. I slammed him against the brick wall. He confessed everything, the words tumbling out in a terrified rush as I recorded it all on my phone. He admitted our parents paid him $75,000 to sabotage the engine and kill the comms. "They said it was an insurance job," he pleaded. "They swore nobody would get hurt." I had his confession. The next day, I got the final piece. An old friend in the insurance business confirmed that our parents had taken out a massive, multi-million-dollar policy on the yacht just 2 days before the trip. The stage was set for the estate settlement hearing. Our parents arrived looking like the picture of grieving benefactors, ready to claim their bloody prize. Their lawyer droned on about assets and distributions. They looked confident, smug. When the judge asked for final objections, I stood up. The room fell silent. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and steady. "This entire hearing is fraudulent. It's based on a crime." I let the accusation hang in the air before delivering the final blow. "And it's based on a lie. My sister, Olivia Carter, is not dead." The courtroom doors at the back swung open. Olivia walked in. The courtroom exploded, gasps, shouts, and the sharp crack of a mother's scream, as if she'd seen a ghost. Draw out the aftermath: journalists shouting questions, Ethan's parents embracing Olivia in tears, Jack looking at his parents one last time as they're handcuffed. This deepens catharsis and stretches runtime naturally. Our mother let out a strangled, animalistic shriek. Our father stared, his face collapsing in on itself with the horror of a man seeing a ghost walk into his own trial. Olivia, her voice trembling but strong, told her story. I played the saboteur's confession for the stunned courtroom. I presented the signed insurance policy. Our parents' denials were weak, drowned out by the mountain of evidence against them. The judge ordered them taken into custody on the spot. Their trial moved fast. They were convicted on all charges, including conspiracy to commit murder. I felt no joy watching them being sentenced to prison, only the quiet, somber release of a chain, rusted with years of neglect and abuse, finally breaking. Olivia never set foot in the Lake Geneva house again. She sold it, along with everything else. With the fortune that had almost cost her her life, she created a charitable foundation in Ethan's name, dedicated to providing scholarships and opportunities for kids from forgotten, broken towns like Youngstown. She also personally met with the families of the crewmen who had died on the yacht, offering apologies and substantial financial support, owning what our parents had set in motion. Our story doesn't have a fairy tale ending. The scars of our past will always be there. But we are free. Months later, we stood on a quiet beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and gold. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "We made it, Jack," she whispered. I put my arm around her, the warmth of the sun on our faces. We were no longer the two scared children hiding from the storm in our house. We had walked through the storm and come out whole, not unscarred, but unbroken. We had lost so much, but we still had the only thing that had ever truly mattered. We had each other. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Storms can take everything, money can twist even family into monsters, but if you hold on to the people who truly matter, you'll never drown. If this story kept you listening, don't just move on, subscribe, like, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that justice can come, even after the darkest night. Every click tells us you want more stories where truth wins, and your support keeps these voices alive.